this video is sponsored by OneFootball. If you need a new football app on your phone, OneFootball is the place to go. You can select Celtic as your favourite team, and that'll give you all the latest Celtic news, transfer speculation, fixtures, and even live match updates if for any reason you can't make or watch a game. You can also add widgets to your home screen to keep up to date with Celtic's next fixture, who it's against, what the kick-off time is, all that stuff. And you can track leagues from across the world, league tables, top goal scorers, you name it, you'll find it all there on the OneFootball app. You can download it by clicking the link in the description of this video. It's free, absolutely free, wherever you get your apps on your phone. And it's a great way to support Celtic Fans TV. So if you haven't downloaded it already, please click the link below and get involved. What's happening, folks? Welcome back to Celtic Fans TV. The wait is almost over. Celtic are nearly back. The international break is finished. It's less than 2 days until we kick off against Motherwell at Celtic Park on Saturday. We're here to look ahead to a massively important and hectic period for Celtic from now until the beginning of the World Cup in November. I've got Stuart and Martin with me to go over things. First of all, Stuart, international break. It's been and gone. Do you love it or do you hate it?
Do you know what? To be fair, Scotland are half decent to... Well, I say half decent to watch. Scotland are getting results now. And in fairness, we played really well in the game against Ukraine, like the first one. And we grounded a result in the second one. So that was good. Wee bit concerned about Callum McGregor, because he didn't look himself in the Scotland shirt. Hopefully he's back to normal when he's back in the hoops. Nice to see Greg Taylor getting a bit of game time for Scotland as well. But I mean, I'm just glad we're going to get back to the most important stuff, the weekend.
Aye, that's it. I'm always indifferent about the international break, but I have over the last few years started to watch Scotland games again, probably because there's more of a Celtic contingent in there now, with the likes of McGregor, Taylor getting some game time, Turnbull's been involved, Tierney in previous years as well. But aye, nothing beats getting back to watching Celtic, Martin. 13 games in the next 42 days, 2 and 3 games a week, really condensed fixture calendar. A massively important period for the club coming up, and off the back of a defeat that we've had to stew on for 2 weeks.
I mean, it was a bad time to get a defeat because I just wanted to get into another game as quickly as possible, and I'm confident we'll bounce back from that. Obviously, there are some concerns around injuries, and you know, we're going to have to tap into some of the squad players to get us through certainly the games that are coming up immediately. Hopefully, we'll get some of those injured players back. But you know, a tasty run of 13 games, albeit over a condensed period. There's not a single break now. It's 2 games a week. Some real tasty ties. Paul kind of broke them down into Saturday or Sunday, Tuesday or Wednesday type thing, just to say what's the 2 games this week. And you know, look at this week coming up, and the one that jumps out, Leipzig away, and then the week after that, Leipzig at home. You know, those back-to-back games are the 2 that jump out of those 4 games, and then Motherwell in the Cup out the next 2. The 2 after that, really 2 cracking, mouth-watering games. Hearts away, one that we all look forward to, and always a tough game, but one the fans love. And then Shakhtar at home, you know, magnitude of that game. Well, I mean, that's a must-win. Those are back-to-back, so that's probably the one that jumps out. And then Livy away, notoriously difficult game, albeit we got a cracking result there last year, and then followed by a trip to Spain. You know, thousands of fans will be. I don't know if we're looking forward to that one because of the game itself, or whether it's just the occasion. That probably on that one. So, but Hearts away, Shakhtar at home, Livy away, Real Madrid away. What a run of 4 games, and then finish with 3 that are your sort of run-of-the-mill games that you know we should manage to get a result without too much difficulty. With United at home, Dundee United at home, Motherwell away, and Ross County home. Interesting that in that 13 game run, we play Motherwell 3 times. That could only happen in Scottish football, couldn't it? You play the same team 3 times in that space, that short space of time. But you know, 4 Champions League games, 8 league games, and a League Cup game in amongst it. Some cracking ties. St Mirren game was disappointing, but on that day when we look back at it, maybe a bit too brave with playing, you know, a shadow team and playing 5 first team players, couple of injured players, and then you know 4 unforced changes that the manager decided to do that, and it backfired. But cannot wait to make amends. I mean, that result's not representative of the Celtic team we've been watching this year. We've been absolutely flying. And I'm convinced that we'll put that behind us, and we'll pick up where we left off prior to that game and get stuck in starting with Motherwell on Saturday. I can't wait.
Yeah, so much to look forward to, Stuart, over the next few weeks. As Martin says there, the St Mirren game and the result was unexpected. It was one of the first games I've missed. I was travelling back up for down south, only really caught the second half. First game I missed for a long time, but to me, it's probably the first game since Ange took over that we didn't really look like an Ange Postecoglou team. And even from those early games last season where we were absolutely all over the place, you could see exactly what he was trying to do. But just one of the games where it didn't happen at all. A lot of changes in terms of personnel, but a concerning performance. But I think it's worthwhile pointing out that sometimes you go into these games and you think all you have to do is turn up and win. So a bit of a slap in the face should wake the team up going forward.
Fingers crossed, mate. I mean, I think a couple of things maybe jinxed it. Being available and match fit, and I think I said in the stream I did before that game, whatever the last thing I was on, I was like, you always know that an Ange Post, or it might have been one of the Twitter spaces, you always know that an Ange Postecoglou team's going to turn up. Lo and behold, go to Paisley, they managed not to for the first time in a year. Listen, I think you're going to have the Scottish football, right? As you said, Martin, playing the same team 3 times in that condensed amount of space. Those kind of weird quirks and things always happen in Scottish football. I think that St Mirren game was just another one of those. We met a team that was right up for it in the day. The manager got the team selection wrong. It was a concerning result, but big picture, I'm not too concerned because I back this team to bounce back. And actually, I'm a wee bit of the opinion that a bit of, I say rest, obviously some players have gone off in international duty, and I'm sure we'll come to talk about the litany of injuries that there's been. But I think actually a wee bit of rest's fine because I think we'll come at it with a fresh perspective, maybe a fresh energy. And I don't think that's a bad thing when you look at this run of games. This season's ridiculous, by the way. It's this Winter World Cup. So you basically get 2 half seasons. So that's why we're in the position where we're going to have all these games in this short amount of time. And to be honest with you, I just think I don't like the fact that football is so dominated by money now. You've got this Qatar World Cup, and it's meaning that our domestic campaign is completely splintered and fragmented. It really, really annoys me. Although there's some good fixtures there, I don't like the fact that they're all piled up like that, and I don't think that's good for Celtic, especially given, as I say, the injury situation that we're going to go on to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Martin, you can forgive the team 1 league defeat in 12 months. I think if we go on our 12 months with 1 league defeat, we'll be doing all right. But you would expect them this weekend and in this next run of games to really come out fighting after that.
Yeah, I mean, domestically, certainly we go into a run of games now that we should win, and we should win convincingly. You know, Motherwell at home, St Johnstone away, Hibs at home are our next 3 league games before we go to Tynecastle, which, you know, no doubt Hearts have been a bit indifferent this year, but traditionally that's a really, really tough game. But our next 3 league games, I would expect us to go out and win convincingly. You can't deny that in amongst that there's some tough games in the Champions League and a game in the League Cup as well. But next 3 league games, I'm confident we'll negotiate comfortably, particularly with 2 of those being at home and then St Johnstone away. Traditionally we do well, and they're struggling this year, so super confident about those 3. And then we go into Hearts away, Livy away, two cracking mouth-watering games that we'll need to perform well on the day. It will be interesting to see how much the manager uses his squad, because we've talked on recent shows about how we're feeling a lot more confident about the squad, and he doesn't need to rely on that same 11. I think what we'd all like is if he makes those changes, that they are kept to 1 or 2 changes, because no matter how good a team you are, you look at the biggest teams in England, the biggest teams in Spain, when they leave out 3, 4, 5 of their star players, they struggle. Regardless of the strength of the opposition, what league you're in, what country you're in, how good the players are. It's just a matter of fact that your best 11 versus your best 5, you're going to take a big chance. Also, my personal view on it was to do that in the away game on those tight pitches. Things like St Mirren, it's not an excuse, it's a fact. St Mirren played with a single match ball for the whole of the first half. They didn't have a replacement ball. So that's the type of thing you're up against when you go to these away games, and I'm sure Ange has recognised that for himself now. And things like ball boys and different things that go on in these games. And, fair play to these clubs, they're doing everything they can to gain an advantage. But I think when we're taking those chances, we should be taking them at home. And I know what he wants to do. He wants to entertain 60,000 fans at home, create a great atmosphere at home. I get it, right? But two things. One, I would like him to make less changes, but utilise his squad. And secondly, take more risks at home rather than these away games that can be more difficult to negotiate.
I think you're spot on. It's about how you rotate, and it's about making sure that you do it incrementally rather than just that, as you say, wholesale taking the spine of the team and rearranging it. Just didn't work.
There was just too many. There was too many big players not playing. The likes of Jota, O'Reilly, Carter-Vickers was obviously out, and we'll come to talk about the injury situation in a minute. But I just think when you have 3, 4, 5 of your real big performers not involved, there's always a chance that the collective performance is going to look a bit incoherent. Like the players aren't used to playing there, and there's not. Those players aren't used to playing together, and there's not those steady, consistent performers that know the system inside out, and you always get a bit of that when you make too many changes. Stuart, obviously these Champions League games are also really condensed. We've had the first two. We've got a point on the board after a dominant display in Warsaw against Shakhtar Donetsk, in a game that we should have perhaps won. I didn't get a chance, obviously, to make a full-time reaction in Warsaw because my travel situation was cutting it a bit fine. But I thought we were really good. I just think on another night we would have won it and possibly should have won it. And it's Definitely. a good encouraging performance and good to get a point on the board away from home. But it'd have been brilliant to get 3.
I think there could well be a situation where we rue those missed chances, whether that's to miss out on progressing in any way or to miss out on progressing in the top 2. I think you've got to take your chances at this level. But what we've got to remember is that the team is on a learning curve. So that's why I'm willing to forgive that. It was a step forward for Real Madrid and that we got a point. I also think it's, in terms of control of the game, it's Celtic's best Champions League away performance that I can remember, because we controlled that game for 70, 75 minutes of it in terms of possession, in terms of tempo, in terms of everything. They got a goal against the run of play. Mudrik's a fabulous player. They got a goal against the run of play. And after that, it was like you saw the naivety at the level. Having dominated
Celtic away from home in Europe for 10 minutes, didn't they?
That was it. And it's just like that. There was that collective kind of panic set in, Yeah. But I think looking at the performance as a whole, I have never seen us play like that away from home in Europe. We absolutely dominated it. And it gives me a lot of hope for what we can do progressing as the group goes on. The negative side is that Carol Starfelt and Cameron Carter-Vickers are both injured at the moment. And Cameron Carter-Vickers in particular, that's absolutely massive. That's, if I could have picked, maybe besides Callum McGregor, right? If I could have picked one player to get injured, it would have been him, because I think he's absolutely vital to what we do with that defence. And I think especially seeing the Welsh Jens experiment in Paisley, doesn't he fill you with a lot of confidence? So I think it's a massive afternoon for them against Motherwell, just to get a bit of confidence and almost you kind of want to see, and it's hard for other teams to test us domestically at home. But I almost kind of want to see Motherwell provide somewhat of a test, because I want to see how their confidence is defending, not just using the ball and keeping possession and all that stuff. I want to see what their confidence is like when they actually have to do the defensive side of the game heading into that trip to Leipzig. And I must admit, for me, I think the Champions League group, I wouldn't even have been saying that we would have been ruining missed chances to maybe finish third prior to those injuries. I was convinced that we were going for second place and would have got third. I think there's a totally different complexion to our Champions League chances without Cameron Carter-Vickers available. And I'm not sure of the latest prognosis for his injury, but I think it will be for this block anyway. And that's massive, man.
It is huge. I don't know what the timeline is looking like. That Anne said before that he was hopefully be back after the international break, but I do think there's been a word that it's worse than they might have feared. But I'm sure someone will ask the manager about it tomorrow, and he might give us a more detailed update. Martin, I think you can take that Shakhtar game in isolation and say that we should have won it given our dominance and the chances we created. But if you would have told me even 6 months ago we would play away from home in the Champions League group stage and dominate like that and come away thinking we should have won it, I probably wouldn't have believed you. So it is a sign of progress that the team can perform like that at that level.
The fans' expectations going in that game were quite high. We're quite bullish actually. Expecting we go in and get a result and we come away with a victory, and kind of you're a wee bit unsure. You've seen the result they got against Leipzig, and so many disappointments over the years. Celtic away from home and brilliant at home. Maybe not so much in the last few years, but traditionally brilliant at home. Away from home, almost a laughingstock. Celtic have been, let's be honest, over the years. So, one or two good results in the Champions League campaign and the actual Champions League proper and the group stage games. So you go there a bit apprehensive if you've lived through that and you've experienced all that. Not so much for the young team who are, maybe Champions League debutants and just starting to get involved in the whole excitement of it, and they're going into it full of confidence. You probably got two brackets of supporters, and then there's Ange Ball as well, and you're thinking we cannot all help but get carried away with the whole Ange Ball thing. And of course, the players that he's brought to the club, and the players that we watch every week, and the players that excite us and get us off our seats. So I went into the game mixed emotions, a wee bit unsure as to what to expect, but was blown away by the team and their desire to get forward, their energy levels away from home at that level. Because you're up a level, you're not playing in the league, you're not playing against the opposition that we face every week, and could they compete at that level away from home? And what was we anticipated it to be quite an intense atmosphere. But they didn't let us down. And a mistake for the goal. A good finish by Shakhtar, but ultimately a mistake by us. But other than that, it was another one of those nights where we rode the missed chances, and two or three that spring to mind in particular. I'm thinking, how did we miss that? Similar to Real Madrid now. The unknown in the Real Madrid game is, had we gone 1, 2 or 3 ahead, would Real Madrid have scored 4 or 5? They may well have done. We'll never know now. But in that Shakhtar game, had we got a second or a third goal, the result was not in question because we were so dominant on the night. So it's massive now, isn't it? The game against Leipzig away is massive, and that'll be a tough game. Their results are all over the place. They're brilliant result one week and then a rubbish result the next week. We probably could do with one of the home games next, just to get another 3 points on the board and be really competing for places. But I think if we get 7 points from the next 3 games, that would be a right result and it potentially be enough to put us through. We just cannot predict what's going to happen in Madrid. Are they going to put out a shadow team? We'll have to expect to go to Madrid and get nothing, and therefore get 7 points at the next 3 games, in my opinion.
I think so. I think I'm right in saying that all 3 of us will be in Leipzig next week. I certainly can't wait for it. Stuart, when you seen that first result in match day 1 with Shakhtar winning 4-1 there, you thought we could barely be getting Leipzig at a better time. And then, of course, they sacked the manager a few days later, and they've got Marco Rosa in, and I think the results have picked up a bit. They did smash Dortmund shortly after he got appointed.
New manager bounce always, huh?
Aye, new manager bounce, just in time for playing Celtic, of course. But that will be a tough game. I was there when we played them in the Europa League a few years ago under Brendan Rodgers, and it was like textbook Celtic away from home in Europe, like one of the most limp performances you're ever likely to see. I think Abui Kouassi played that night. We were just terrible, offered very, very little, never looked like scoring. We beat 2-0, it could have been 4 or 5. That's a massive game next week, isn't it, in the context of the group? The double header's huge, and as Martin says, you'd maybe like the next one to be at home, but that game next week is huge.
If we get 4 points for the double header, right, then we are absolutely in driving position to take at least third in the group. Because at that point, you look at Leipzig and you think, well, that's them. If they've only got 1 point and it's from a game against us, and we've made sure that we're better in the head-to-head, then I think at that point we can say with confidence, right, looking like we've got third, let's now drive on, If we can win the game away at Leipzig, then again, like I'm talking about how obviously the defensive issues might have negativity. That might flip in a few days' time when that's the case. I think the thing about Leipzig is there's very much a case of you do not know what to expect from them. It might be that this is, and it would be just Celtic's luck, that this is the game where they decide to get the bit between their teeth. And to be fair to them, in the game away at Real Madrid, I think they provided a stiff enough test for them. It took Real Madrid
level for 80 minutes, wasn't it?
Yeah, it took them a long time to break them down. So I think with that in mind, then I by no means think it's going to be easy. But given the amount of goals that they've been shipping, then I think that shows you. And we are a team that, well, I'm saying that after we're talking about the Shakhtar game, where we've missed tons of chances, but hopefully we've got those misses out the way, and then we can go to Leipzig and take advantage of the opportunities that are presented. I think I'll have a better idea about Leipzig. One of my mates is coming on the channel in a few days' time, prior to the Leipzig game, and he's an expert in Bundesliga, so he'll probably give us a better idea of what we can expect. But at this point in time, I don't know what to expect, and knowing the way that this season has gone so far, it could be anything. Literally could be anything.
It could be. That is a roller coaster this season, and following Ange Postecoglou's Celtic. Martin, we've touched on it briefly so far, but injuries are a big concern after the international break. Carter-Vickers obviously out before the St Mirren game. Starfelt out as well. Yakimakis picked up an injury when he was away. I think Haksabanovic was injured as well with Montenegro. Turnbull missed the Scotland duty but did train today, I believe. Maeda picked up a knock with Japan, but he trained today as well. We could do without injuries piling up at this particular period. But for me, it is those centre halves, like to have Starfelt and Carter-Vickers out, and Carter-Vickers particularly, who Stuart's touched on already. They're just so important for us, and those two as a pair together have never been beaten in the league, which I think tells you about the strength of the partnership, and the sort of triumvirate if you include Hart in goals. I think they're key for us, and I think in Europe that sort of assurance and calmness that Carter-Vickers seems to exude through the full team, I think we miss that big time.
We do, and we don't know. What we do know is we're going to miss Carter-Vickers. He has turned into a fan's favourite. He's just so solid. I've seen him quite often when the team have been offensive as a group, and he sits back and sometimes we get hit in the break. There's 2 or 3 players run at him, and he just gets the cigar out. He's so good, so composed. Quite often doesn't have to get into fourth gear. He just deals with it efficiently, effectively, never panics, and he's got a range of skills. He's good dribbling the ball. He's good at distribution. He's brilliant in the air. Positional sense. He's got the lot, right? He's an absolute hero for us. So we need to get him back soon. I'm sure I read an article in the last 24, 40 hours which suggested he might be out for a number of weeks. So I'm hoping I didn't read that. I'm hoping it was just a nightmare and I've completely made it up. But I think he is.
Martin, it's weird, right? Like, because in the US they've described it as minor, right? And then it looks like his participation's in doubt according to the domestic reports for the Motherwell game, but they're not going any further than talking about the next game. So it's weird. Like, you're hearing all sorts of different injury reports about him, and I don't like that.
Yeah. We desperately need him. He's he in our top 3 or 4 players? I think he is. We're relying on him so much. And then, of course, the Starfelt. We could have done without that, because Starfelt and Jens would have given you a little bit of comfort. One thing to call out about St Mirren, because as much as we've had a little bit of a laugh about the rollercoaster season and the rest of it, what a solid season it's been. If you put that St Mirren result in the bucket, Real Madrid, we exceeded expectations, albeit a disappointing result, but performance was spectacular. We've already talked tonight about the Shakhtar performance. The result comes with it to some extent. We're getting a draw. In the league, we've blown everybody away.
Yeah.
So, it's really just that St Mirren game as far as concerned. The one thing to call about St Mirren game we haven't yet talked about tonight, and I think I'm right in saying this, Juranovic has started every single league game. We rely on him heavily as well. I mean, he's a real asset for the team. So, it's really, really important that both him and Taylor are in form, particularly when, and the keeper behind them when we're compromised in the middle of the park. And then, of course, you look in front of them and you say, you need that middle part of the team and up top to be good, because everybody relies on every other position on the pitch. What I would say about the injuries is you're right to highlight those two at the back, and those are the two that we will have sleepless nights over. But across the rest of the team for the starting 11, we're okay. Most of the other injuries are the periphery players, so we're okay in midfield. I'm a fan of the Jota and Abada as opposed to Maeda. I love Maeda and he brings a lot to the team. He's missed an incredible number of chances for us. We still love him because he's work ethic, but I like the Jota and Abada, right? So we've got Jota, Abada, we've got Kyogo. Still have concerns about how injury prone he is, but we've got him right now. And then in the middle, we've got our favoured players in the middle as well, with Riley, who performed well in international duty. We've got Hatate, who didn't get played, which in some respects we're thinking, I can't believe he never got an opportunity, but he's come back fresh. McGregor, we're a wee bit worried about him being tired, but I genuinely believe he's one of those players that could just play, a bit like a Scott Brown. He'll play that 50, 60 games a season. So we're solid in the middle. We've got our best players in the middle. We've got our best players up top. We're just compromised with those two in the centre at the back. But the other 9 players are all fit, all raring to go. And we're just a little bit light on the bench, because some of those players that you bring off the bench are injured just now. So, but I'm not overly concerned. You just don't want any more. You want no more in the next couple of games, no more injuries.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell you, I don't watch much of Japan, but they must have some midfielder free. Hatate can't get anywhere near it.
Do you know what's interesting as well? They started with it. I mean, I'm only looking at Google, so I'm not saying the formation's accurate. But they started with Daizen Maeda up front.
Aye.
Which was interesting.
He plays through the middle for them quite often, I think. Aye. And was Kyogo on the bench, I presume?
He was unused substitute in the last game against the US.
There you go. Must be some team Japan, I tell you.
I don't know if they were wrestling players, because Minamino and Nagatomo and all the kind of stars didn't play.
Okay. I was only in Germany as well, I think, so they weren't too far travelled like they would usually be. Anyway, moving on, the big thing that happened in Scottish football over the international break was the updated TV deal. The SPFL announced a 4-year extension to the Sky rights to take us through to 2029 season. Stuart, what's your take on everything TV deal related over the last couple of weeks?
It just incenses me, mate, that the Scottish game is constantly, in terms of the value back from any broadcaster, is never what I think can measure it with the standard of football that you get up here. I also think there's a few things that make Scottish football. I mean, Ange Postecoglou and what he's doing at Celtic, right, is revolutionary, I think, for the Scottish game. And I don't think there's been recognition of that in the deal. I also don't think there's been recognition of the fact that, and sorry anybody that pillories me for saying this, but Rangers got to a major European final last season, right? So the two Glasgow Giants are both, I mean, they're rubbish this season, but that doesn't really figure into my argument here, right? I think that the way that they've elevated the level of competition again should have been reflected in this deal. I also think that consistently the administrators of the Scottish game, like Neil Doncaster, right? I mean, I do stuff in the Norwich City space. He used to be chief executive there. People do not speak very glowingly about his abilities as a chief executive. So obviously in Scottish football, he gets elevated to one of the highest positions possible. So, I mean, that tells you all you need to know. I think the Blazerati culture, I think the administration of the game, and the fact that we don't champion ourselves, man, right? And I know there's some innate about the Scottish psyche that causes that, right? But the fact that that is reflected every time the TV rights are sold, and especially when it's a 5-year block like this to the end of the decade, right? There's no kind of room for manoeuvre with that. And I think to be honest, that consistently you don't get the value, I think, for the product that is put out there. And I don't think you can blame the broadcasters for that, because it's obviously their job to get the rights for as cheap as they can. But I mean, the people in charge of the game, absolutely shocking. And another massive part of that is the Motherwell factor that you mentioned, Martin, right? Playing the same team 3 times in that space of time, you get bored, mate. You get bored. Expand the league. And I've always said this, that the way to enhance Scottish football is to make it that you play teams once at home and once away and maybe in the cup, right? And then see those Old Firm, or well, Glasgow Derby, whatever you want to call it, fixtures, those then become vitally important because it's like you only play them twice a season or in cup finals or whatever, right? So they take on even magnified importance because of that. But unfortunately, people take a short-term view on it and they don't say, right, do you know what? And the argument used to be, we're going to get less gate receipts if we don't play Rangers and Celtic like 3 or 4 times a season. Well, do you know what? You're now paying folk to no go and sit in a seat. Shocking, man. It's nonsense.
Aye. Asking people to pay twice to try and make up for the shortfall by not giving Celtic the same number of tickets. The thing for me, you can debate about taking the only offer that's on the table and Sky having rights now for what will be basically the full decade. But the thing for me is I would have less of an issue with it if the Sky coverage was excellent and it looked like it was really progressing and getting better. And I think when you compare it, obviously the flagship product for Sky is English Premier League. Everybody knows that. There's an absolutely ungodly amount of TV money invested in the English Premier League, and everything else is secondary to that, certainly for Sky. But I think the standard of pre- and post-game analysis on Sky for Scottish football is below what it should be. I think the number of mistakes they make with badges and team names and the likes is laughable for a broadcaster of their resources and standing and broadcasting across Europe. And so you just think, is there nothing better? I think everybody enjoyed the BT coverage when they were involved, but they've obviously, for their point of view, pulled out because they don't maybe see it as viable. But was it offered back to them? I don't think it was really offered to anybody this time around for this next 4 or 5 year block. I just think it could be so much better, Martin. And obviously there is some games that where the stadiums aren't full, that don't involve Celtic or Rangers. But I think we could market the game here and sell it much better. It seems like we're almost just reluctantly accepting of the image of Scottish football that everybody else portrays about it, that the standard's really poor, the sort of the way it gets looked down upon from people in England and the leagues down there. I just think we could do a much better job of selling the product.
Yeah, and the number one component to the product of the football as a brand, regardless of which league you play in, is, and you've heard lots and lots of famous people say it, Chalkstein being one of them, is the fans, right? So fans are number one, the centrepiece of the jigsaw, the core piece of the cake, the core ingredient. So you look at the treatment of the fans, right, and it does start with. So I was watching some of the games at the weekend with the ladies in the top league in England, and one of the things that got me really interested in watching the game, right, because I haven't watched an awful lot of it. I've been watching the progress of Celtic's ladies team and some of the games in Scotland, but not watched much of the English games. But one of the things that got me really interested in watching those games was the number of people in the stadium. So at the start of a couple of games, the stadiums looked empty, and I thought, oh, there's not going to be much of an atmosphere there. You're there to watch the skill and the goals and the defending and all the rest of it and the technical elements of the game, but you're there to watch an atmosphere, and the fans play a big part in that, right? So there's nothing better than you go and you watch a big game and you know there's a rivalry and you know the fans are going to get right in it and you can hear the fans in the background. It's not just about the football and the players, it's about the fans and the overall atmosphere. So where we're getting it wrong. So how many times over the last couple of years have we had fans scrambling to say, has anybody got a link to the game? Because I can't watch the game. I can't get a ticket for the game and I can't even watch on the telly because it's not on the telly. How criminal is that, right? So where we're getting it wrong, and we've talked about this a little bit, but where we're getting it wrong is the stadiums aren't full, right? And a lot of the clubs are doing the same thing, and it's so bizarre, it's incredible. They're throwing away money. It's not just the ticket money; it's the catering, it's everything that those fans, Celtic Rangers fans predominantly, that they bring to that small town, that small city. You know, the money for the local pubs. Just everything that they bring, and it's criminal in the Scottish game that's been allowed to happen. Now, that's not just about the people at the stadiums, it's about creating an atmosphere in a stadium, right? Regardless whether it's the away fans or the home fans, it's creating an atmosphere, it's promoting a product. So when you then switch on your telly, you're not just watching a game of football, you're watching a fans enjoying themselves in a full stadium. And it's exactly the experience that I went through at the weekend, where I switched the TV on, I watched the stadium filling up, and there was tens of thousands of fans watching the ladies' game, and it made me more interested. Almost felt obliged to watch it because so many other people were watching it. And what that does is it then lifts the people who are playing, who are on the pitch, because they enjoy it, because they're part of an atmosphere, and they produce a better game. Not all the time, but most of the time that's what happens. You then get to the bit that you've talked about, Paul, who you listen to. If you are sitting in the house, you're not lucky enough to get a ticket and you're at the game, who are you listening to? We'll pick on Chris Boyd, right, because he's an easy target, right? But you're listening to people who are so narrow-minded, who are intellectually nowhere near where they should be to be doing the job that these guys are doing. You compare those to the guys that are doing it for the English. Now, that some of them are ex-players, but they're good to listen to. They're good speakers. And what have we got? And we've got Stan Petrov. We all love Stan Petrov. I think Stan Petrov's the best person to have, or Chris Boyd, or something like James McFadden. I don't. I think we could have much better people that we listen to as well, that critique the game. And you would much prefer that they were unbiased as well, because there's a lot of bias in there, and there's things getting said that just the people are in the house and they're cracking up. I can't believe he said that, and actually ruins their day rather than it being an enjoyable experience. No atmosphere in the game, sitting in the house raging they can't get a ticket when there's all these empty seats, and they're having to listen to somebody who's biased. And that could be on both sides. That could be Celtic bias as well as Rangers. So the overall thing needs looked at. The overall thing's a shambles.
I think that's absolutely spot on, Martin. Everything you say there. It's shambolic that you're actually getting situations where they are proactively making sure that there's empty seats in stadiums. And as you say, it's all about a product. It's all about making something to watch. And see, when Scottish folk go to a gig, go to a football match, go to anything, we produce some of the best, if not the best, atmospheres for a mass crowd at any event. You ask any singers and artists, pop artists, or like football teams that go to Celtic Park. So in the big games, the atmosphere is going to be great. So why not actually take that, right, which is probably one of your unique selling points, and then say, right, let's pin things on this, and let's try and magnify that and make the most of that. There's other elements of Scottish football that are really sellable as well. The pantomime villainry, right? I can remember that clip where Stephen Craigan wiped out Chris Sutton with a sliding tackle on the sideline at Tynecastle, right? That stays in your mind because it's something that's a bit fun, and it's something where that pantomime rivalry, the pantomime villainry of Scottish football is another thing that you could take, you can bottle up, and you can say, this is what makes our game unique. And there's a third thing I think that separates us from anything. And Chris Boyd's constantly going, oh, we need VAR. No, we do not, right? VAR is the thing that kills the essence of what made football the most popular global sport, which is, right, you're basically kicking a ball about, hoping it goes in a net for 90 minutes, right? And the thing is, it was all predicated on that one moment of ecstasy where you're like, yes, the lineman's got his flag up, no, yes, right? And see this, let's go and look at a telly for 3-5 minutes, whatever it takes, right? Gone. So Scottish football not having VAR is not us being backward. It's us actually going, do you know what? We are what we are. Let's be what we are, and let's sell that, and let's magnify the good points rather than short-termism and greed dominating the agenda and making stupid decisions that are against everyone's interests.
See, in terms of VAR, I'm actually supportive of it where it's applied properly, but I mean, we've seen many a league have a problem with it, and you just know that Scotland and the SFA and the referees,
imagine the political
they're going to make an arse of it. You just know. Everybody's had teething problems with it, but you just know Scotland's teething problems are going to be tenfold what MDLC's were. And
well, there's also the agendas. There's also the if you ask any Scottish football fan, right, there's always an agenda against their team, right? Mm-hmm. So I could tell you by who the VAR official appointed was, right? I would know whether they were going to give Celtic a fair crack of the whip or not, right? And I think most Celtic fans would be the same. Most Rangers fans probably have their thoughts, most Hibs, Hearts, or the other teams, right? But if you then complicate the biases that people perceive officials to have with VAR, It just creates a whole other melting pot of nonsense. But actually not having VAR, in my opinion, is a unique selling point for Scottish football, because it allows you to still have that pub debate, which is the essence of the match day for most fans.
Oh, we'll still be having pub debates, mate, guaranteed. They'll just, more of them will be taken up by discussions about VAR. Anyway, to bring it back to the TV deal, the last thing I want to say on it is that from 24-25, Sky will be able to show 60 games instead of 48 that they can currently show. The problem is the past couple of seasons, they haven't even fulfilled 48, and there's been multiple weekends in each season, and I think we've even had one so far this season, weekends that go past where a full fixture card, there is nothing broadcast on the television. So people are trying to get streams and they can't get them. There's no legal streams. And okay, with the new deal, clubs are going to be able to stream 5 home games a season. But there's weekends that have went by where there's no ability to watch the game. And as you've described, Martin, the ability to get tickets is also being restricted. So, in what other league in the world would weekends of football go by where the game, collectively the game, clubs included, are just foregoing money? So they're rejecting ticket money because, okay, they might have their own agendas. Some of the smaller clubs want to try and build out their own fan base, and their existing fan base don't like it to sell 50% of the stadium to the other team. Okay, but I just don't get this agenda that leads to weekends going by where there's money, people have money that they would willingly put into the game, be it through broadcast or streaming or going to the game if they could get a ticket. And that money, they just keep it. Thousands of people keep that money. It doesn't go into the game because the game doesn't want it for one reason or another. Whether it be that the governing body hasn't sourced the right broadcaster, or the broadcaster hasn't took up the rights that weekend, or it be clubs who are effectively holding back attendances for one reason or another. It's just bonkers, and I don't really understand when the backdrop season after season in Scottish football is that there's not always enough money in it, particularly for clubs outside the big two. It's just baffling. It's baffling for me.
You know, I would talk about this for days, Paul. It's something I'm really, really passionate about. Get involved in ticket stuff. The supporters bus week in, week out, spend a huge part of my life. Try to help people out as best I can with regards to members of the bus. And so there's loads of core issues in here, right? So one of them is our next generation of supporters, and I admire Celtic for what they chose to do a number of years ago, and other clubs have done the same thing where they said, you're under 13, come and watch 20 games of football for £50. And what a fantastic initiative. Really, really good. And loads of people in my club and loads of people, thousands of people took advantage of that and took their sons to the game, and it became affordable. Yeah. And there was no resentment that I've paid X amount of money and my kids not watched the whole game.
That was my first season ticket.
You took them week after week after week, and you pursued. And because you pursued, then the child, the wee boy or the wee girl, got used to it. They got a bit of continuity because you were doing it regularly, because you weren't paying out all that money. You would still spend the same amount of money. You'd be buying the kids food and juice and all the rest of it. And then those kids went on, certainly my kids and loads of people's kids went on to buy more expensive tickets. A brilliant marketing decision. Now, those same kids, not those same kids, the next generation of kids are being denied now. Why? Because you can't get a season ticket for loving or money. You're struggling to get tickets for a random. They might be on sale for a day or two just now, but you're struggling. They're not on sale for it. I mean, we're seeing home games now. By the way, at the weekend, there'll be lots of people outside the stadium looking for tickets. Going home from the stadium, denied access to the game. Then you go to the away games. How many kids can get access to an away game nowadays? I quite often will sit in the home end. Right? I'm quite happy to sit in the home end, let one of the young boys go in and sing all the songs and enjoy their day. I've had the benefit of that over the years, so I'll sit in the home ends, right? What I'd promote the away clubs to do is turn some of the home ends into family sections. Right? If you're worried about people going in the home ends and maybe singing things you wouldn't want them to sing or whatever else, turn them into family sections. What happened to the days when Hibs and Hearts used to mix, used to all mingle in? I mean, I know we're going back a long time and it wouldn't happen nowadays, but for some of these clubs, you're not telling me that a Celtic in a Ross County and a Celtic in a St Mirren and clubs like that can't mingle and you can't have family sections. We need to get kids back to the games, because what will those kids end up doing? You know, at a time where The kids are all sitting on their phones or sitting on computers and all the rest of it. You want to get them out and get them a bit of fresh air and get them to fall in love, because they're the future of the game, right? The other thing that winds me up, so you've got your TV thing where you can't even watch it on the telly. You can't get a ticket for the game. And then you get into the game and you stand for 20, 30, 40 minutes waiting to get a cup of coffee, a bovril, a pie, a cheeseburger, whatever. See if you've got a game down south in England. It's like a full day experience. You go hours before the game. So if you go to Wembley, there's restaurants. You go in and there's restaurant. Pick a restaurant. It's like being in Blinken Princess Street or George Street in Edinburgh or the city centre in Glasgow. Pick your favourite restaurant and sit for a couple of hours and have a meal with your family and spend an absolute fortune. Right? It doesn't all have to all be about drink. It can be about sitting down and having a nice meal. For example, in Scottish football, we cannot serve you a pie. You go down for a pie at half time, they're sold out. And that's across all the grounds. It's absolutely farcical. If I was involved in any of the catering franchises at any of the stadiums, the revenue would be times by 10. It would be served like that quickly, efficiently, and they'd serve you with a smile on their face, because you've got fans wanting to give you money. But kids outside the stadium in tears because they can't get a ticket, or they're in the house sitting on their phone, or they're playing FIFA. They can't get on the telly. They can't get to the game. And when they get into the game, they can't get a pie at half time. The whole thing is an absolute farce. And you think in this day and age, some of that stuff would be the absolute basics. And you see other countries. I had a mate who went to the Spain-Portugal game the other night. It cost them £8 to go to Portugal, Spain. £8. Unbelievable. You go to Germany, they treat you like you're royalty. You travel on the trains for nothing. You get into the games for sweeties. Going to Leipzig next week, £15 to get into a Champions League game. We are prepared in Scotland to pay top dollar. We are prepared to pay 40, 50, 60 pounds for a game. But they can't provide us with stadiums big enough, or they'll sit with stadiums that have got all these empty seats. Yeah. It's a lost generation. That's what it is. It's a lost generation because of narrow-minded club chairman and people running Scottish football.
Superb.
That was great. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that whole segment. We are coming up to an hour. We've overran a little. That is all we've got time for tonight. Like this video, comment with your own thoughts below. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. I'll be back tomorrow night with the starting 11 prediction for Saturday's game against Motherwell. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.